Thank you very much, our Director of Ceremonies, Mr. Gideon Rutalema. Let me recognize the Madame Keso from ECI. Also, let me recognize our consultant, Dr. Florence. I hope I've not mistaken. I know we're meeting for the very first time. Because we haven't done our introductions, let me recognize the delegations from ECA, and I know that there must be government delegation from Uganda. Let me also recognize you. Let me just say all protocols observed so that I should not miss out anyone. Let me start by commending ECA from the last point that Madame Keso mentioned of going green before I go to my remarks. Why am I so pleased with that approach? Because I'm at ACA, I'm coordinating climate mobility initiative in Africa, where we're looking at the nexus between climate change and human mobility, where we're looking at the climate change as one of the drivers for migration. So the only way for us to mitigate that or to address climate mobility, we have to look at carbon footprint. So I'm very glad with that approach. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, by expressing my gratitude to be part of this national report validation workshop on the assessment of economic empowerment of returnee migrant women under the auspices of United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, which is a joint program under international migration in Africa, changing positive narrative and removing barriers to mobility. Madame Keso, your mentioning of the empty chairs, that was one of the triggers to what extent have we changed the narrative of migration. We are inviting participants to attend this very important function, but there's still stigma or misunderstanding on the importance of this particular function. No wonder we have some seats that are still vacant. So we still have a long way to go. Allow me to express gratitude to all participants for finding time to attend this important validation meeting. The initiative is focused on promoting economic empowerment among returned migrants, particularly domestic workers from the GCC countries. On behalf of Her Excellency, the Commissioner of Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, Her Excellency Minata Sesuma Samati, I wish to express our sincere gratitude to ECA for the continued collaboration and cooperation with AUC in various areas of migration governance and management across the continent. Let me also thank the representative from the government of Uganda for finding or sparing you time to be part of us during this important validation meeting. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, the issue of returning and integration is very complex, encompassing a diverse, occasionally conflicting interests and priorities within national policies, societal attitude, as well as international cooperation. Similar to the choices made regarding migration, the choice to return is personal for each individual and is shaped by various influencing factors. Many women migrants choose to go back to their home countries on their own, whether due to desire to return home, to reconnect with their family members, or because they feel they have accomplished their migration objective, or due to changed circumstances in their host as well as country of origin. It is an undisputed fact that migrant women frequently occupy low wages, informal as well as unstable positions, putting them at risk of economic exploitation and violation of their rights. Allow me to share with you an experience of how women migrants, especially domestic workers, face, particularly in the GCC countries. I'll give you an example of my country. When I was working as TIP focal person as well as migration coordinator, we had over 300 women who migrated to GCC countries as domestic workers. The moment they arrived in those countries, their passports were taken away from them. It means they couldn't move. That is one element of controlling them, their movement. They could work more than the agreed hours of work. They could start working from 3 a.m. to around 12 midnight. In our homes, 3 stories, 5 families. But the amount of pay that they could get was very little. Or to some extent, some of them could not even get their pay. And now, when they're coming back home, you would find that the level of vulnerability is even escalated, is higher than when they are going back. Therefore, it's very important that we need to discuss these issues in depth and how can we sustain their economic livelihood when they're coming back home. Therefore, this spirit of the initiative aligns very well with the AU migration policy framework for Africa and its action plan that calls for effective and sustainable return, readmission, and reintegration of migrants, which requires cooperation and mutual understanding between the state of origin, the destination, and this should not jeopardize free movement of persons in the continent. Let me underline the sustainable reintegration, because this is the emphasis under the AU Migration Policy Framework for Africa and its action plan. How can we attain sustainable reintegration? This can only be achieved when returning individuals attain economic self-sufficiency, establish social stability within their communities, and achieve psychosocial well-being that enables them to manage the factors that drive remigration. Once sustainable reintegration is accomplished, returnees can make subsequent migration choices based on their preferences rather than an obligation. And that is the spirit of this particular project. Now, let me just highlight some fundamental principles that we must all address when we are doing the reintegration of returnees. What are these fundamental principles that we need to share, which could also shape the policy, as Madam Keso mentioned? One, we must ensure that access to social protection for returning migrants and the portability of their social security benefits facilitate sustainable reintegration. Social protection not only contributes to poverty reduction, but it can also help in reducing inequalities and social inclusion of returning migrants and their families, allowing them to better contribute to their communities. Secondly, support returnees, communities, and authorities through holistic approach to sustainable reintegration at the individual, community, and structural levels, seeking to enhance opportunities for human development. The third fundamental principle that we must also look at is foster cooperation and the capacity development with the government, as well as other stakeholders on developing right-based return, readmission, reintegration, policy, and processes that comply with national laws and framework of international laws. This helps to make sure that there is no harm. So the principle that we have to follow again when we're doing readmission or reintegration of returnees is do no harm. Fourthly, ensure accountability and evidence programming throughout the return, readmission, and integration processing, aligning relevant activities with the national development priorities within our nation. If we don't align our retention or reintegration with the national development priorities, it's a situation that will create where we find that once the project under ECAAU joint program has phased out, there is no sustainability of reintegration mechanism. So there is need for us to make sure that these reintegration programs are aligning with the national development priorities. So that even if the stakeholders or international partners, their project has phased out, but there is sustainability of our programming. Last but one is access to decent work should be a priority of social, economic, as well as labor integration plans, and having a job is key to sustainable integration in the home countries. Therefore, states should also be encouraged to provide the orientation process on returning migrants, take into account returnees' level of skills to accelerate integration into the labor market. Finally, which is very fundamental as well, is ensure that the return and reintegration occur in a safe, dignified manner, that migrants can make an informed decision and freely change it at a later stage after having provided with all the viable and legal options available to them, including retain opportunities and take ownership of their choices. Once these migrant women have been reintegrated, they will reach a point whereby they have to take ownership of their life for the future. They will not be supported forever. Therefore, there must be a cut-off point after that. With these remarks, ladies and gentlemen, once again, on behalf of AUC, it is my pleasure to be part of this validation workshop, and I'm looking forward to a fruitful discussion for the next 3 days. I thank you for your attention.